So I titled this talk today, Faith, Trusting Our Potential for Transformation. And my teacher, Kamala Masters, and also another teacher of mine, Sylvia, not Sylvia Bornstein, but Sharon Salzberg, have lots of really inspiring talks on faith. Kamala's I've heard many times. And I pulled out my book that Sharon Salzberg wrote on faith. And so I've got a few quotes from it because she goes a little astray from how her other books are, telling a really personal story of her life and her childhood and the importance of confidence in the practice. And so when I was contemplating what to offer, I thought about generosity and gratitude. And that's why I brought it up in our sitting practice, because it's a rightful topic for these holidays and Native American Heritage Day that was yesterday. And also November has been the National American Indian Heritage Month. George Bush declared this in 1990. But I decided instead to offer some inspiration of developing faith or confidence in ourselves. I've been asking myself what's going to help me keep going. These are challenging times, navigating my way in my practice and in the world, and not give up on myself completely. You know, there are times that we need to go back, sort of back off of the practice a bit and take a break and begin again. But there are also times when it's so hard to keep going. And Sharon Salzberg, if anyone doesn't know who she is, she's an early Western Dharma teacher who also was a founder of the Insight Meditation Society. And she's written lots of books. Loving Kindness is her most popular one, several of them. She probably has a publisher that tells her to write another book every year because she's very productive. But she has this quote in her book on faith. Let me see if I can find it, first of all. I had it right in front of me. It is a great turning point in our spiritual lives when we go from an intellectual appreciation of a path to the heartfelt confidence that says, yes, it's possible to awaken, and I can too. A tremendous joy accompanies this confidence. When we place our hearts upon the practice, the teachings come alive. And that turning point, which transforms an abstract concept of a spiritual path, it transforms it into our own personal path, is faith, is what she says. And another author, some of you might know, Stephen Batchelor. He's a Scottish Buddhist teacher, and he's known for his writings on Buddhist subjects and his leadership of meditation retreats worldwide. And he's also a noted proponent of secular Buddhism. And he says this about faith. Faith is not equivalent to mere belief. Faith is the condition of ultimate confidence that we have the capacity to follow the path of doubt to its end. Faith in the Buddhist understanding is not the opposite of doubt. Faith is embracing doubt with mindfulness and wise reflection, and it's bringing doubt to wise counsel. And during this time in history, there are so many outer conditions that activate inner conditions of unease and doubt in ourselves, times when we can feel destabilized or feel fear about what the future might bring. And we sense within ourselves and around us the sea of vulnerability of changing conditions. It's been this way actually since, time immemorial, since the Buddhist time, but living in this time when the amount of news is overbearing and it can come so repeatedly and quickly, it feels like we're in a time of epic change on many levels. And here in our meditation practice, we're training to be able to face that vulnerability within us and around us with strength and continuity of mindful awareness. We're also learning how to do that with the gentleness of kindness and compassion. As we do that, we're building confidence in ourselves, knowing how to touch into the untouchable or the unalterable quality of life, this quality of faith. And that faith needs to be mostly faith in ourselves. I want to read a poem by David White. It's a poem on faith. He says, I want to write about faith, about the way the moon rises over cold snow, night after night, faithful even as it fades from fullness, slowly becoming that last curving and impossible sliver of light before the final darkness. But I have no faith in myself. I refuse it, even the smallest entry. Let this then, my small poem, like a new moon, slender and barely open, be the first prayer that opens me to faith. In talking about the quality of faith, it's one of the factors, it's one of the 5 spiritual faculties. And I want to speak about how it's held within the Dhamma. How many of you know about the 5 faculties? Anybody know the 5 faculties? A little bit. So for each one of us to come here, continuing our training and our practice in mindful awareness, we already have some degree of faith. We have some deep intuitive intelligence and actual experience that the practice of awareness does bring benefit into our lives. And we see the changes in our lives that are rippling out into the world. I shudder to think what kind of world this would be if we didn't have our practice to do. And we chant sometimes the refuges and the precepts to remind us of our commitment to living in a non-harming way. And we chant the words of the Buddha about metta, spreading our kindness over the entire world. The teachings are continually reminding us to live in harmony with the world around us and inspire us to live in alignment with our highest aspirations. And some of you might have insights that have helped transform your view of life and the way you live your lives. We see the changes in our lives that ripple out to all our connections and our relations. We might express it in different ways, but we all have this common yearning to continue to be less reactive towards ourselves and in the world, to continue to connect with this ever deepening inner peace. So that no matter what stones of destabilization or discord are thrown into the ponds of our minds and our lives, through our training, we know that the inner ripples and the tsunami waves will quiet down, and that inner stillness, clarity, and wisdom will help us respond with compassion. We have this common yearning to be more at ease with the reality of our lives and how we can face what is difficult to face within us and in the world around us. We're learning to develop and establish skill sets that replace our old habit patterns. And we can relax, recognize, allow, bring interest instead of judgment to what's happening. We endeavor to see all that arises as a natural unfolding that needs acknowledgement instead of getting bummed out. We get in touch with that wholesome yearning to be free from the tenacious habit patterns that cause pain to ourselves and others. They actually need to be exposed and acknowledged, or else they're continually covered by veils of delusion and of ignorance. And that yearning is the spiritual aspiration to go towards what is yet unknown, to venture beyond the known, which can be quite challenging and scary. Let me ask you this. How many of you feel that you've been venturing into the unknown lately? Has anybody been venturing into the unknown lately? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And this is why we need faith in ourselves. This is the true birth of faith, not in anything outside of ourselves, but in our own potential for transformation and realization of a transcendent peace. And so the 5 spiritual faculties are said to be like a cart. Maybe you've heard this analogy before. They're like a cart with 4 wheels and a driver. And if any of the 4 wheels are too small or wobbly or not in balance with the others, then the going on the spiritual road will be rough. The 4 wheels symbolize faith, wisdom, energy, and concentration. I love these 5 faculties because they're one of the short lists that I can remember. And it really is encouraging in your sitting practice when you're roaming off, not knowing what to do or thinking a lot about something. You can just come back to faith, wisdom, energy, concentration, and then there's mindfulness. If the driver isn't paying attention, there's all kinds of problems. So the driver symbolizes mindfulness. And it's a really useful teaching, and it's really kind of a nice list. The trick is that faith and wisdom, they balance each other. And energy and concentration, they balance each other. Mindfulness can always be increased. So for mindfulness, there isn't really a limit. And this list sounds simple and maybe obvious, but there's more to it than meets the eye. And on the spiritual path, it's worth checking up on ourselves regularly to determine if the first 4 are strong and in balance, and if we can just be a bit more mindful. So there's faith or confidence or conviction. That's the first one. Or it's also saddha in Pali, the original spoken language of the Buddha in the Buddhist time. There's energy and effort, which is viriya, and I'm always using energy and effort in my practice, particularly because, I'm one of those sleepy ones. So I'm always calling on energy and effort, just enough to be interested. And mindfulness, which is sati, concentration, which is samadhi, and wisdom or discernment, and that word is panya in Pali. The Buddha was really pragmatic, and he didn't philosophize about the nature of reality. He gave simple, basic guidelines about how we can manage the challenges and difficulties in life. The Buddha started with the basic human condition that we often suffer. Suffering can take many forms: anxiety, tension, stress, grief, fear, or dissatisfaction, just to name a few. And he emphasized that suffering is workable, that we can engage with our suffering in such a way as to be freed from it. And he described the 5 faculties that we need to develop to do this: confidence or faith, energy and effort, mindfulness, concentration, and discernment, wisdom. So these 5 qualities are present in varying degrees in most of our regular activities. They're useful in developing any skill, be it playing a musical instrument, training in a sport, or cultivating a meditative mind. The Buddha recognized these universal human capacities and taught us how to use them to develop this craft of meditation. Faith and confidence comes first because without it, we would probably never step onto the Buddhist path. With confidence, we apply ourselves and we experience the results. The more confidence we have, the more fully we engage in the process of meditation. When we begin our spiritual practice, oftentimes our confidence might be inspired by someone we've met or something we've read, something from outside of us. And in time, we learn from our own experience that the practice is helpful. Our confidence becomes verified. For example, maybe you've learned from experience that mindful breathing can calm your nervous system or temper impatient impulses. Maybe you've learned that remaining mindful of your body gives you more stability and calm. Or maybe you've seen mindfulness of clinging. Seeing it helps free us from that clinging. And with each of these experiences, your confidence in both your ability to be mindful and the value of mindfulness grows. I'll go through the next faculties or strengths. I'll mention them, but I won't go into a lot of detail about them. But I'll give you a few descriptive words, because that's another talk for another one of them. But effort is the next one. The more confident we are, the more likely we'll apply ourselves in spiritual practice. And there's no spiritual practice really without effort. A regular meditation practice requires some effort, and it takes effort simply to get to the meditation cushion. Once we're there, we have to make some effort to turn our attention to the breath and to let go of thinking. The effort in meditation doesn't need to be strained or complacent. But even so, sometimes it's happened for me anyway. It takes heroic effort to get me to go sit on the cushion or sit in the chair. Just to stay present for my experience might take great courage. And at other times, effort is easy and delightful, and you might feel like you're on a raft carrying you down a gentle stream. Of course, you have to steer around the eddies and avoid the hanging branches, but even this can have an effortless quality. Mindfulness comes next in the series. Inspired by confidence, we make this wholehearted effort and become more awake and attentive to the present moment, better able to track our experience moment by moment. Mindfulness is the simple capacity to track what is happening in the present. We learn to recognize what's happening without resistance or conflict or holding or clinging. Concentration, as the attention becomes more stable and the forces of distraction weaken, we can develop the 4th faculty, which is concentration. With concentration, the mind is less fragmented and it becomes increasingly composed and focused, unified. It's like a musician that's absorbed in playing a score. Concentration helps mindfulness to penetrate beneath the surface of the chatter. That's why we pay attention to the breath over and over, to build concentration. We like to see what's going on at a deeper level. And a mind that's confident and engaged and mindful and focused can develop wisdom or discernment, the fifth faculty. Wisdom helps us determine which movements of the mind and the heart, which thoughts and feelings are useful. Wisdom is what arises when we notice that something is skillful and something is unskillful in our hearts and minds, when we can let go of something and what we want to develop further. And it might seem challenging or perhaps more active than you think meditation should be, but with mindful discernment, you can see the busy mind doesn't really know what it needs. And with wisdom, we begin to take responsibility, not just for our behavior, but also for our mind and what it does. So these 5 faculties are skills, and we recognize and cultivate them as part of our meditation practice to help us develop meditation and manage our life experiences so that it can be of benefit to ourselves and to others. The Buddha taught these qualities as among the most important for becoming awakened. Not only that, he also noticed in his own practice that they would lead to success in whatever he put his mind to. So they're qualities useful in any attempt to do anything of importance in our lives. Their primary focus is on the practice of meditation. But the first faculty, confidence or faith, deals with how we view the world and how we live within the world. And for that reason, it's an aid in training our mind in all the aspects of the practice that surround meditation. The 5 faculties are listed in that order in which they're sort of ordinarily developed, but they pop up all the time. You can always notice in your meditation practice, when you might need more energy, when it's a good idea to boost your confidence by noticing each moment arising and passing away, those continuity of mindful moments. And so sometimes the word faith has lots of detrimental effects on us because of upbringing and different definitions. And so that's why we can also refer to it as confidence or conviction, because conviction deals with our views about what's possible in terms of ourself and our world. And in terms of the world, we're confident about what is possible and desirable to strive for. In terms of ourself, conviction deals with what we believe we are capable of doing. In the Buddhist teachings, we're looking for a happiness that goes beyond anything we've known before. And so it's important to have a sense of the world that allows for us for that kind of happiness and a sense of ourselves as capable of finding it. And because this happiness is beyond the ordinary, we can't know whether it's possible until we've reached it, which means that the beliefs that help us reach it they have to rank as a matter of conviction and not really true knowledge. But we're making this effort, and they become knowledge when they've produced desired results that we can realize as our mind states, and happiness is more accessible. And so in this light, I want to talk to you about several kinds of faith. There's blind faith, there's bright faith, there's verified faith, and there's unwavering faith. And Sharon, in her book, mentions as Dharma students that we can probably recall a period of bright faith, which is at first it's an intoxicating rush of falling in love with a teacher or a teaching, or falling in love with a brand new sense of possibility when we had previously felt confined or unworthy. And suddenly, this inspiration can turn our lives around. It's incredibly exhilarating and wondrous, and it's the first step. This state has some similarities to blind faith. And if you're a skeptical type, you could view them as the same. Blind faith has that same kind of exhilaration and feeling of having a much larger sense of possibility. But blind faith implies that you can't question, that you can't examine, that you can't investigate. Blind faith is the end of the road. While in Buddhist teachings, bright faith is just the beginning. It's necessary and compelling, but it's still a beginning. And through questioning and through putting things into practice and examining them, bright faith then moves to the next stage, verified faith. And that relies less on external forces and more on our own experience. Verified faith comes from our own experience of truth. The movement from bright faith to verified faith happens through putting something into practice and not just believing what we're told. It's about not being gullible, about questioning everything. What's frightening about blind faith, then, is that there's no maturing into a verified faith. Verified faith then moves to unwavering faith. Unwavering faith comes about through constant deepening. It's like something seeping into your bones. If you've seen the power of love enough, for example, then you know it so deeply that it becomes something that you don't need to refer to externally. You know it so very deeply. Sometimes faith or confidence can be explained as something called spiritual urgency. There's a word in Pali that describes this deep spiritual urgency to purify the mind and heart of greed, hatred, and delusion, all the various ways that cause suffering. And this word is samvega. There's a good description of samvega by Larry Rosenberg, who's a retired guiding teacher of the Cambridge Insight Meditation Center in Massachusetts. I love his book. It's called Breath by Breath. It's a really great book, Larry Rosenberg. And he says, samvega leads to conversion, the freeing of the heart from an egocentric existence to a search for what is timeless, vast, and sacred. In our own unique ways, we've felt this spiritual urgency, this samvega, deeply in ourselves. It's a very deep need to go beyond the basic need for survival. It's an aspiration. And by aspiration, I don't mean attachment to some goal. This aspiration is more like an open-ended journey to go towards the vastness, timeless, and sacred that's within us, to face the worldly dilemmas with courage and with grace. Along the way, our spiritual journey, we take great care to acknowledge with mindful awareness the habit patterns of greed, hatred, and delusion that arise, and not feed them. Just to be aware of them doesn't feed them. Not feeding them weakens them, and eventually they are uprooted completely. Greed, hatred, and delusion. Bit by bit, they no longer affect our lives. And at the same time in our training, we develop what is good. We're letting go of greed, hatred, and delusion, and we're developing dana, sila, Samadhi, generosity, non-harming, and concentration and wisdom. Sila, non-harming, includes qualities like compassion and loving kindness, patience, truthfulness, harmonious living with others. This is a dynamic process of awakening these dormant capacities of goodness, of wisdom, and letting go of patterns that cause continual suffering, giving us a deep sense of inner safety and courage, and trusting that we can realize our highest potential as human beings. So I think I'm going to wrap this up by sharing a reflection from Sharon Salzberg from her book on faith. Her subtitle is Trusting Your Own Deepest Experience. In her book, Sharon probes into her deepest experiences, a painful childhood, the ups and downs of her own journey, where she both questioned and found inspiration in her practice with Indian and Burmese and Tibetan Buddhist teachers. And her courage in writing this book inspires readers to navigate through their own times of suffering and loss of faith. And the stories are musings recounted with warmth and humor and with love for Dharma and for life. And she says, often we see faith as dogma or doctrine rather than a capacity of the heart. Or we think of faith cynically as something stupid which requires us to surrender intelligence. In fact, we might think that by its very nature, faith means we cannot question or inquire. There are so many ways that the word faith is misused to evoke images of submission or fanaticism, and these days even hatred. She says, what I want to do is create a sense of faith based in the teachings of the Buddha that is different from all those other ways of misusing the word. I explore faith as a liberating quality that doesn't demand we give up love and respect for ourselves. Nor does it demand that we separate from others or feel ourselves to be exclusive holders of the truth. As a quality of the heart, faith doesn't exclude others. It's really about connection. And I'd like to mention that in Pali, the language of the original Buddhist texts, the word that's translated as faith is a verb, saddha, and it literally means to place the heart upon. It's a movement of participation, to offer one's heart, to give over one's heart. It means coming forward as if we are landing in the center of spiritual life, which is where we should be. We're not on the sidelines feeling left out, hearing a spiritual teaching and thinking that it's relevant to other people, but not to us, or that we're not qualified or capable of encompassing it. Saddha suggests that we step into the unknown, recognizing that while we can't control the world, we are able to go forward. And so I'm going to leave you with this. Ultimately, faith is about oneself. Not oneself in the personal, egotistical way, but like the Buddha reaching down to touch the earth on the eve of his enlightenment. Unwavering faith that knows to call upon the trustworthy earth of our own nature. May we place our heart upon and come forward to land in the center of our spiritual life as we participate and offer our hearts in understanding these 5 strengths for deepening and keeping our heart balanced in our practice. Thank you for listening to the Dharma. As we unfold through a life of practice, powerful qualities of heart and mind take root and grow within us. And if any of it seemed confusing or it didn't make sense, just let it go. And may whatever landed as useful percolate into your own experience and help you continue building your foundation of awakening to a happy life in the Dharma. We'll sit for a little while and just let the words settle down. And as we're sitting, just notice what some of the words from what I was speaking might have popped out. What is it that you've found to be unwavering, if you have? What has given you confidence in the practice to help you carry on? So think about that for a few moments. What have you found to be unwavering, if you have? And what has given you confidence in the practice to help you carry on? Taking a couple of breaths and letting your eyes gently open, and I'll just ask to see if someone feels like they want to share what has come to the surface that you might be able to mention feels unwavering, or how have you found confidence in the practice? What helps you carry on? And don't be shy about offering something, because many times any one of our experiences will be similar or ring a bell for someone else. Hi, Margaret. Can mute? Yes, thank you.
Sure, thank you. I absolutely love what you were saying about the dynamism of the trusting process of faith. How dynamic it is and how it's a heart quality. And so, because I am most comfortable thinking about it as that, uh, not something that's fixed, but something that's always in changing and, like I said, dynamic. And the beauty of when you were speaking of the faculties, how the feedback loops sort of grab hold, and this is what can really sustain you when you decide that you're going to apply yourself to the practice, is the mindfulness eventually grabs hold uh, of well, energy grabs hold of the mindfulness, they grab hold of each other, and they they become, you're better able to become concentrated. They all work together. And so that the effort becomes a little bit less. That's always changing too, because they have a life of their own after a while. which is quite beautiful. So I don't know. I have great faith in the Buddhist teachings, but it's not just it's not because it even started with blind faith. I was told by my teacher to experiment with the practice. And I went home and I did that really seriously and found that it was unbelievably, um, it gave back so much to me. It gave me so much. It was just unbelievably generous in itself. So I think you did a very, very beautiful job with that Dhamma talk, and I'm inspired by it. And I think it was just really, really nicely done.
Thank you, Margaret.
Sure, thank you.
Thank you for sharing that.
Mhm.
Mhm. Anyone else feel like sharing? Oh, Joe.
Thank you so much for that talk. It was very timely because I was reading a book on Indigenous American perspectives on the crises that we're living in and the climate crisis in particular. And a couple of the things that had come out of it was just the importance of faith and trust. And I was grappling with those sort of concepts as to, I have a lot of anxiety. And so that feels like the polar opposite of faith and trust, right? You're always afraid of something in the future. This talk was really, really helpful. And, as far as what I've found to be unwavering, what's unwavering is change, right? Change is always happening. And like my grandmother used to say, this too will pass, and that's always the case. But as far as what has helped give me faith is just that by practicing, my anxiety has lessened, and I enjoy my life more, and just that peace of mind has been really liberating and welcome. So thank you.
Thank you. It's on the side, you'll feel it, and then you push up. Mm-hmm. I don't know. Let's see.
Hello.
Nope. Jill, will you do it? Or yeah,
Hello.
there we go.
Okay.
Yeah. You just have to talk into the top of it.
Thank you for that talk. It was really, really exciting to hear you go through all of the acknowledgments of the slaves. And I mean, I was totally stunned. I wished you had taped it because I want to hear it again and again and again. It's so beautiful. Thank you so much for that. One of the things that I think has really driven my faith is having helped other people. And even now today, uh, I'm going to brag just for a second, but I don't mean to brag. I had no idea it would be this impactful for other people, but I'm a record holder for being the strongest woman in Oregon in deadlifting. I actually like to exercise, and I was standing by the owner of a gym, and I said, wow, look at her do that. It was a very young woman picking up like 200 or 300 pounds. And I was like, whoa. And now I can actually deadlift 190. So, I don't drive because I can't see. It's funny to me because there used to be a guy who was blind in my neighborhood. Never mind. I'm not going to go there.
Hold it more at an angle.
Oh, okay. Sorry. Yeah. And so I just want to say it's so uplifting when you have a practice that you really believe in and you share it with other people. It just really just for me, it really catapulted me into having even more faith because I could watch them grow. And it's just been really delightful. So thank you very much for sharing the part of what has developed our faith, because I never really thought about it. So thank you very much.
Thank you. And then let me see if somebody online. Okay, good, Karen. I see you. Let me find.
Hi, I'm Karen. So that was a lovely Dharma talk. Thank you, Candle. What's so beautiful about the Buddhist teachings is that no matter what the issue is in my life, I can pick up a book or listen to a talk or from different teachers on YouTube, whatever, and it speaks to what I'm going through. The application is incredible. It never ceases to amaze me how any problem can be just turned and looked at a little different way and clarity comes. So anyway, just yes, such a help in my life. Thank you.
Thank you. I know how challenging things are for all of us. And of course, in your world of nursing, there's lots of challenges. And give Doug a big hug for me.
Will do.
Being here, Karen, I was thinking when I was writing out the letters, I wonder where Karen is. Will I see her? And here you are. There's power.
Well, yeah, the timing is always a bit of a challenge. We've been driving people to the airport, and I just couldn't drive again today.
I totally understand. Thank you.
But then we have Zoom. Thank you.
Jill?
So I was thinking, what do I have faith in? Your talk made me think about that. And I realized that for most of my life, I had faith in escaping, faith in books, TV, reading, food, sleeping, I had faith and I realized that all those things that, done as a way of escaping end up making me feel my heart is closed, my mind is closed, and I got a headache and I don't feel good. And so I have faith that a Buddhist practice does not lead, those are dead ends. And to me, the Buddhist practice is not a dead end. I have faith in that. I do. I have unwavering faith in that. And of an unwavering faith that those other things are dead ends, because I've tried them enough and I know. So, but then I was thinking as you were talking, what things really make my heart open up? And there are two things I thought of that if I experience them, I start crying. My heart is so open that I'm weeping. I'm crying openly. And one of them is if I experience goodness. If I see an act of that it hits me as goodness. And you can see it in Christmas movies, right? Or even about religious figures, the feeling of gosh, it feels so good that something like that would be in the world, just goodness. And I want to be that way. And also connection. Like if I'm at a concert or, watching people dance, flash mobs. I was watching with my mom where everybody's doing it together and it's all connected and everything, I just start bawling. I just start crying. And so I'm wondering, so this to me is, does the practice of Buddhism lead to that much open-heartedness? Because that would be something that would mean so much to me. And I don't know the answer to that as I'm sitting here. So that is an area of investigation for me.
Thank you so much. Anyone else? Margaret, I see you raised your hand. Let's let James say something first.
Yeah, one thing that's really, I guess, giving me faith is when I read the suttas, like the 4 applications of mindfulness or the mindfulness of breathing or 2 kinds of thought. And when I put those into practice, just how they affect my life. They make me a lot calmer and less anxious. And they've really, the way the Buddha explains the mind and how you change it, it's really, to me, it's just been life changing. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Okay, Margaret, do you want to say one more thing before we wrap?
Yeah, just quickly, listening to what Jill had to say, I found that when my practice is pretty strong, I'm much less guarded about my heart. And I mean, I remember driving once and a wave of, I don't know, I think some sadness came over me, and I just, while I was driving, cried. And it just felt so, but it passed very quickly. And and I know it was because I was a lot less guarded about the expression of the heart qualities. And it's just to me, it's very, very beautiful. So I just want to share that. Thank you.
Margaret.
Mhm.
Yeah, you know, the metta practice is part of it is referred to as a heart as wide as the world, and that it's completely unconditional, that it's, you know, metta is all around us all the time. We're just letting ourselves step into it to be in it. So, I mean, a brief answer to your question is yes. Uh-huh. I'm going to stop our recording here.